to my right, we have Susan Honda, who's on the council. We have Hong Tran, who is on the committee. And on my left, we have Jack Walsh, a member, and we have our council president, Linda Kochmar, here. Is there anybody on the screen? Guess not, so we'll move forward with the first item, which is any public comment. Do we have any?
Paul McDaniel is.
What's that?
Paul is.
Paul, you there?
He's under attendee.
Okay, we'll say Paul McDaniel is on the screen, but although I don't see him.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, there. That's a great looking dog with those glasses. Hey,
Yeah, that's Miss Violet.
those are designer ones. I like that.
All right, I'll mute up.
Okay. Is there any public comment on the, seeing we have no public comment, we'll go to committee business. Is there anything anybody would like to bring up before we get started? No? Item A is approval of the minutes from July 1, 2024. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of minutes July 1st, 2024.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to go to item B, which is a 2021 storm drain CCTV inspection and assessment project and acceptance. Mr. Cole, it's your turn.
Yes, sir. Let's see here. Okay. Council Chair, members of the committee, thank you. I'm here tonight to discuss the project acceptance for the 2021 storm drain CCTV inspection and assessment. My policy question for you today is, should the council accept the 2021 storm drain CCTV inspection and assessment conducted by Pipeline Video Inspections LLC as complete? Action needed. City Council must accept the work as complete to meet the Washington State Department of Revenue, Economic Security Department, and Department of Labor and Industries requirements. Financial summary. Authorized maximum contract amount was about $292,000. Construction contract was just over $163,000, left us $129,000 remaining in the budget for that project. I have options 1 and option number 2 for you this evening. And the mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the September 3rd, 2024 City Council agenda. And I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Walsh.
I like the cost savings there. And how did the inspection go? I mean, is everything?
Pretty well. You know, it's as good as aging infrastructure can go, and corrugated metal pipe can go in the Pacific Northwest ground. There's always repairs that need to be done, and this project basically is to identify those and then get them repaired before we have other problems.
Yeah, were there any significant major repairs that are going to be causing budgetary challenges?
It's all within the, we have an annual, I think, $300,000 budget for repairs of this nature.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Did you, EJ, did you want to say something? I see your blue mic.
So yes, it identified a lot of repairs that need to be made, pretty much citywide in what was expected. So this is the third cycle of this that we've done with the goal of being able to have the entire system televised to actually figure out where the problems are. So the most significant ones we've already started fixing. A lot of them are being fixed by our crews in-house. And then some of them are being rolled into larger projects. But yes, to answer your question, there's a lot of repairs that this identified. But frankly, that's also what we were expecting based on the age of the infrastructure that we inherited from King County.
With areas where there are major repairs, is it a matter of replacing stuff, and if it's replaced, will it last longer than originally, or?
So we don't use corrugated metal pipe anymore because it corrodes, among other things. So when we replace it either with concrete or smooth line corrugated plastic pipe, which has a substantially longer design life, depending, and what we replace it with depends on a little bit more specifically where and how deep and what kind of groundwater we have and some other factors. But yeah, some of them we can refix by slip lining. Some of them we actually have to dig up and replace pipes. And we've done both based on this video inspection so far.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, do I have a motion?
I move to forward the 2021 storm drain CCTV inspection and assessment conducted by Pipeline Video Inspection LLC to the September 3rd consent agenda for acceptance as complete.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll move to the 2024 ADA retrofit program, 85% status and authorization to bid. And it's Mr. Kinlock?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Hello, council, chair, members of the committee in the chambers. My name is Charsky Kinlock. I started here as an engineer at the City of Federal Way in February, and this is my first project I get to present on here at LUTC, so I'm a little bit excited about it, but I'll just get right started.
Well,
This is-
welcome for your first presentation.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so this is the 2024 ADA retrofit program. And my policy question for the committee and chair is, should the city council authorize staff to complete design and request bids for the 2024 ADA retrofit program project and return to the LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization? A little bit about the project. I worked with Shoma, one of our engineers also here at the city, and kind of went through our city's ADA transition plan, worked through some of the checklist criteria to determine some priority scores, and one of the things we were looking for was mostly improvements around city center, as this graphic shows. We wanted to pick ramps that the most people would be using and that were also the most out of compliance. And so that was how we came to decide on these 13 ramps. Here near city center, this big area at the bottom is the mall, as many of you know. Here's our funding for the project. Our estimated cost is around $130,000 with contingency and in-house design and management inspection, bringing it about to $177,000. We have $250,000 in funding for the project, $150,000 from real estate excise tax, and $100,000 from lift sales tax. So that is the funding summary for the project. We have two options here before the committee today, and the mayor recommends moving forward with option 1 to the September 3rd, 2024 City Council consent agenda for approval. Any questions?
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Welcome to the city.
Oh, thank you.
Done a good job. So I thought that we were only retrofitting the sidewalks if we were paving the streets. Is that not true?
We have some funding to make ramp improvements as well, especially in a lot of these places that are non-compliant. We've got slopes greater than 8.3%, which is harder for these wheelchairs to get up, and we want to make sure these people have access to our community. And so we have additional funding in order to be able to provide these improvements as well.
I think it's great. I was
Yeah.
just, and out here, it looks
Sure,
like they're
yeah.
being retrofitted out here. Is this road being paved
Eventually,
place?
yes.
Soon?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of concrete work they have to do first,
Okay.
but it'll be paved in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilmember
Yeah.
Walsh?
With the ADA retrofits, I mean, that's required by the federal government, right?
In short, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree, it needs to be done. It definitely needs to be done regardless, but it's kind of another unfunded mandate, correct?
It is. So this project is a specific CIP project that's on the books that was to target the downtown area, to Charsky's point. So this is a little bit different than what's done, and Councilmember Honda's correct. We usually do this in association with paving projects, but one of the 2024 CIP projects was specifically ADA compliance in the downtown area, which is what you're hearing about tonight. So it's a little bit different than what we've done historically, but it is a targeted improvements.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we have a motion? Or
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion. Mr. Chair, I move to approve staff to complete design and advertise for bids for the 2024 ADA retrofit program.
Second?
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Shouldn't
Oh,
that
excuse
say, and send it to the council for, because we're just for further approval. I mean, I'm looking at this
Okay.
right now. It says, and return it to LUC and council for bid. How should this read? Is this going to be moved on to the council?
Yeah, this should be going to the consent agenda.
That's
rather than-
correct, yeah. So
So,
the correct motion should be, I move to forward to the, what's the correct date?
Yeah.
I move to forward to the September 3rd City Council meeting consent agenda for approval.
So can you accept that as a friendly amendment? Can we go ahead and make that a friendly, or do we have to resubmit the?
Yeah, if you agree to the, whoever made the motion, if you agree to the friendly amendment, it'll just be amended to the language I just said.
Okay, I'll,
Just accept the friendly amendment.
I can make it.
We're good.
Does someone on the committee have to make the amendment?
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Why don't we withdraw the motion and
and
restate it,
restate it,
please?
yeah, it'll be easier.
okay, I'll withdraw the motion, and I will restate the motion. I move to forward option 1 to the September 3rd, 2024 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. I will say, we just got some public comment here, and I know it regards, when we talk about recreational vehicles and all, so I'm not gonna ask you to come up until, we get to that item. Thank you. Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. We're gonna go to item D, which is the 2025-2027 solid waste recycling grant approvals. Ms. Kovar, you're up.
Okay, that should just go. Council members, and committee chair, I'm here to talk about our solid waste and recycling grant approvals. For the policy question before you is, should the city apply for grants, enter into related interlocal agreements, and allocate funding for implementation of related solid waste and recycling projects per the proposed resolution? So for some of the background information, we have received several non-competitive grants that assist the city in solid waste and recycling programs for the past 2 decades. They support services such as our repair cafes, drive-through recycling events, but also outreach to multifamily housing to try to decrease the amount of contamination in our recycling and educate people on how to properly use the systems that are in place. So that funds things such as translations into multiple languages so that everybody has the information available. And we also use them for community cleanups. We have used them to do litter pickups. We do not currently use them to do larger cleanups just because of the costs involved. What I'm presenting for you next is our estimates. We have only been given those estimates, and those can change depending on whether or not other municipalities decline the funds, at which point they're redistributed to the people who have accepted the funds. So right now, from the Department of Ecology, we're looking at $130,000. That is for a 2-year grant. And from the Department of Ecology for the ramp litter cleanup program is also a 2-year grant. And those clean the off-ramps and interchanges in our city. And then the other 2 programs are King County, which are normally 2 years, but in this cycle will be 1 year because they're trying to align with their budget years. The local solid waste funding assistance grant from Ecology does require a 25% match. But what we have found is that because of the overlapping scopes of work, that match is usually taken from the waste reduction grant and a little bit of it from the hazardous waste management program grant. So the city in general does not actually outlay for this. Some of the things we've done, as I've said, were recycling and shredding events, community outreach, multifamily recycling programs, and upstream waste reduction. And by that, we mean helping people to understand what you cannot put in your recycle bin. And because our waste management contract returns any profit to the customers, the less the reduction, the more people get back on their bill. And then all of our social media posts, which are both educational and advertise our events. So the options are to either approve the proposed resolution or give staff guidance, and the mayor prefers option 1. Do you have questions?
Council President, Councilmember?
Thank you very much, Chair. Ms. Kovar, who's actually going to be doing the litter pickup on the interchanges and so on?
Oh, we actually have we use our contractor that we use for our regular trash pickup, not waste management, but we have city bins. So Macmore is the one who has agreed to do that for the extra pay.
Macmar is like our landscaping?
Yeah,
contractor?
there are contractors. Yeah, they're cleanup contractors, litter contractors.
Okay, thank you.
They're
Councilmember
the same
Walsh?
ones who did it during the last cycle. And the ramp pickup grant is the only one that's competitive. The other ones are based on population.
Councilmember Walsh?
Can these be used to help support volunteer cleanup efforts?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
So, that's a good question, thank you.
Council President?
How does that work?
How does that work?
How would volunteers apply to be part of that litter
Well, they
pickup
would
grant?
actually have to contact the city, or at certain times, in general, we have people that we have worked with before, local community organizations that say, hey, we want to do this thing, can you provide us assistance? And we provide litter pickers, we provide all the equipment that they need, the PPE, and we usually have staff available to make sure that everything is being done in the safest way
Thank you. Are
possible.
you going to let some kind of an advertisement so people know that they can apply for the grants, or do you just contact people?
In general, most of our stuff is used in programming, so we actually do the outreach to the community and advertise for those.
Okay.
But the other things we have, and that's part of how we reach people and say, do you want to be a part of this? It's similar to what the water quality people do with the stream team.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, so for example, the recent cleanup that was done by the Stand Up Federal Way group, funds like this can help support efforts like that?
EJ,
A
you have a
little
comment?
bit more complicated than that. So the support we can typically provide is, as Rebecca said, it's in equipment and materials. It's not necessarily cash. So and that one, the Parks Department actually partnered with them, not Public Works. But yeah, so part of the grants for this goes to purchasing litter pickers and vests and
Okay.
safety equipment that then community groups can, and Stand Up Federal Way frankly has as well, basically come and sign out as opposed to having to acquire the equipment to do the
Okay,
pick.
yeah.
So yeah, we have that partnership with a lot of different agencies. And then if it is trash from the right of way, we have some ability to go out and if they pile it, pick it up and dispose of it under this. If it's trash from private property, we cannot. It
Okay.
has to be from the right of way.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So is it trash, but not from private property? So if you see furniture or appliances out there, are those picked up?
The city picks them up. That's a completely separate program.
Okay.
That's just our cleaning the right-of-way litter staff that go out and do that. That's typically not done through volunteers. So I guess when I say picking the right-of-way, it's if you have a group of, I'll use the Korean Community Youth Group Association because they do it a lot too.
Right.
If they decide to pick Pack Highway from 320th to 336th, they'll coordinate with us of a location where they can leave all the bags that they've picked of litter, and then we'll go grab the bags. So it's usually more stuff like that where we partner, not piles of furniture. If it's stuff like that, we ask that it gets reported to the city through Eyes on Federal Way, and our staff just go out and direct deal with that.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Council President?
EJ, like the Korean Youth Organization and the stand-up books, they're doing it, volunteer-wise. Isn't there any way we can say thank you to them in some form? I know the Korean community will have like a award ceremony, but stand-up doesn't. Is there anything we can do?
I mean, we, as a department, we say thank you to them every time they do it. If you're talking more like a citywide volunteer appreciation thing,
Yeah.
that's certainly something I can talk to the mayor about.
I
That's not,
wish you would, yeah.
yeah, that's
these
not something
people-
I've ever been a part of a conversation
Yeah.
related to that.
Yeah, bring that up, thank you.
Yeah, years ago, I know there was a citywide.
Way back there was,
Volunteer
yeah.
appreciation event, so.
Yeah.
Actually, quite a while before
Long
COVID,
before.
I think, I think it, so, anyway, I think that.
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's is something that maybe we should take a look at. again.
Councilmember Honda?
It's something I've talked with the mayor about doing, and he agrees, but we need a staff person to help us. And April or May is volunteer month, which is when it really should be done, because we used to have barbecue at the community center for volunteers.
So I'm wondering, Chair, could you ask EJ as part of this committee to take that forward to the mayor?
Yeah, maybe we should have a cleanup at the community center and have hot dogs afterwards. No,
That sounds a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Anything, yeah.
So
better than
I do
cake.
have one question. How do our grants compare to the other cities in South King County? I mean, I'm assuming they're all getting grants because this is King County handing out money and whoever else. And are we on the top of the pecking order for volume amount, or are we right with everybody else, or how do they allocate them?
Because of the size of our city, we actually do get quite a bit more than some of the surrounding smaller cities. These are allocated based on population, so we get a certain percentage of the pie depending on how many people we have living here.
Okay, so the only run in the South King County would be Kent that would be getting more than us, is that correct?
And that's if they apply for the same grants. They may accept or reject those grants.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, you mentioned that it could increase if some of the cities reject it. Why would a jurisdiction reject a grant like this when there's basically, it looks like there's no strings attached, or very little?
Well,
I mean.
some strings, we have to go within
Yeah,
the scope of
we
work
have to
for
do
the
it,
each
but I mean,
grant.
but it's not
But-
with most of them, it's not a matching.
Right,
With
no,
most of them.
that's correct. Most of the reason that, having in my meetings with a lot of these representatives from different cities, most of the reason is they don't have the staff to administer the grant.
Okay.
There's a great deal of tracking and reporting, or they don't have the staff to enact the scopes of work.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Oh, I
I see another blue light.
Thank you. I
Councilmember
think I turned it
Honda.
off. I would like to thank you guys for working with South King Tool Library for all the recycling events that they do. You know, it makes a really big impact on the community, and there's a lot of folks that take advantage of dropping things off, and it's great. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having staff available and to help with that.
You're welcome. Thank you for the appreciation. We generally have between 350 and 500 or upwards cars for each event. Shredding is very, very popular, obviously, and we are looking in the future to partner with Fusion and also El Centro de la Raza, because now that they have a space for us to host it, they are interested in partnering with us to do similar things.
Be awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh, you have a
All
question
right.
or a motion?
I would first like to say thank you as well, as emphasizing what Susan said. And with that, I move to forward the proposed resolution to the September 3, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to item E, which is the initiation of a development agreement negotiations for Sound Transit Operation and Maintenance Facility South.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members, Tran and Walsh, council member Kochmar, and council members. My name is Matthew Blinstrup, Associate Planner. I'm assuming Cheney Skadson's sound transit duties for the Planning Division. What we have is this request for initiation of a development agreement. The final environmental impact assessment, or final environmental impact statement for Sound Transit's operations and maintenance facility south was completed in June. The Sound Transit Board subsequently approved the project to be built at the location generally known as the Christian Faith Center, which is shown here on this slide. That facility would receive, test, commission, store, maintain, and deploy about 144 light rail vehicles in support of Sound Transit's Link light rail system expansion to Federal Way and Tacoma. The facility would also receive, test, and commission new light rail vehicles for the entire Link light rail system. The subject property is generally located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Interstate 5 and South 336th Street. The city received the July 22nd letter from Sound Transit, which is included in your packets, requesting that the city council authorize staff to begin negotiations for a development agreement for the operations and maintenance facility south project. Sound Transit requests a development agreement in order to establish an agreed-upon a development agreement would also allow staff to work with the applicant to achieve community benefits that might not be able to be realized without a development agreement. Based on city code, only the city council or council committee may initiate preparation and negotiation of a development agreement. Therefore, the action before the council and mayor's recommendation is to approve negotiation of a development agreement with Sound Transit. Approval or denial of the ultimate development agreement will require a subsequent public hearing before the council. No unanticipated financial impacts would result from the initiation or negotiation of this development agreement. The applicant will pay for State Environmental Policy Act review and the costs of the development agreement. Unless otherwise directed, the committee's actions at this evening's meeting will result in this item being placed on the City Council's August 13th consent agenda. Staff is available to answer your questions. Should the committee have questions for the applicant, we have several representatives present tonight from Sound Transit. We have Austin Nielsen from Government and Community Relations. We have Kirby Hawkins, the project director for the Operations and Maintenance Facility South, and we have Clint Dameron from Sound Transit Real Property. That concludes my presentation. Any questions?
I see one. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. Will Sound Transit, when they take down the Christian Faith Church, the building, which is quite a beautiful building, it's a shame to see it go, will they recycle things out of that building? Or are they just going to tear everything down and...
I can't directly answer that question to you. I will say that we'll be working with the design builder who will create a construction program, working closely with Sound Transit and the city, and that will help determine how we do our, how we go through our construction process. And at this point, we don't have a design builder on board.
Okay. And what are the community benefits that we might be talking about?
So one of the things we do know that we need to do is there is a street replacement that needs to happen. So we'll work closely with the city on the street replacement as well, and ways that that street can be made a better process for us is moving people through this particular area. We're also looking for some street activation on the north side of the project off of 336th as well. Things such as a way to view the site a little bit better, or do an activity where it softens the buffer between the project and the community on the north side of 336th as well. So,
The people who live there?
yes.
So you would want them to be able to view what's going on inside the property? Is that what you're explaining?
Yeah, that's an opportunity for us as well, so,
Kirby, if I can jump in. So, city council members, if you recall, we amended the development agreement code last year before we executed the development agreement with Trent. And one of the things we did very specifically was we made it clear that a development agreement needed to yield some sort of community benefit. And so part of the negotiation that we will do with Sound Transit is to identify those community benefits and to put those into a draft development agreement to bring forward to the city council for consideration. So we haven't really started that process yet. So even though Kirby mentioned, and this is Kirby from Sound Transit, by the way. So
We
just,
know
just
him.
not somebody off the street. So we will kind of talk through some of those community benefits, and we will definitely try and maximize those for the residents of Federal Way and before we bring something forward to you. But we haven't started that process yet, and just wanted for this evening is to kind of get that ball rolling.
And Councilmember Honda, just one additional thing. The code does require that in the judgment of the city, any code departures or things that they're asking for that are different from our code, it requires that to be offset by providing a benefit to the city of equal or greater value. So that's definitely something that staff and then also the council, when you're making your decision on the ultimate development agreement, will need to keep in mind.
So, because the site is right next to the Hylobus, it might be interesting if you could do something with the Hylobus, maybe a walkway or something to, so people could still view it, if it still will exist after you're done. I'm not sure if it'll still be there or not. Or maybe a park or something if you have any land that you're not using, or something for the benefit of the public.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you again.
And apologies for not introducing myself. So let me formally introduce myself. I'm Kirby Hawkins. I'm the Project Development Director with Sound Transit, so for the record.
Thank you.
I have one question for Keith. What do you think the timeline is from tonight till when things start rolling and when we start seeing more here at the committee? I mean, I know you got a lot of these development agreements going. We passed one the other day for the crossing, or what is it, Kitts Corner, and, I mean, so what's your time, you got a estimated time?
So that's a great question. And a lot of it is driven by Sound Transit and their desire to really get moving as quickly as possible. So the first thing we need to do is start this development agreement. Because because Christian Faith Center has a development agreement on it. So there's kind of like, there's two pieces to this. We have to sunset the existing development agreement and then replace it with the one that we're working on or will be working on with Sound Transit. I'm going to guess with you that both Sound Transit's development agreement for the operation and maintenance yard, as well as Kitts Corner will take longer because it's going to have a development plan. Actually, I think both of these development agreements will have a development plan associated with them. We haven't really talked about that level of detail, but I'm going to assume because they're in such a hurry that they will want that as well. So let's call it 8 months. And everybody wants it to go faster. A year is the general belief that I have that it takes to do one of these things, but if we're really, really moving fast, I think 8 months is realistic.
And to add some context there as well, it took us over a year to negotiate the Trent development agreement, and the Trent development agreement did not have a development plan inside it. So it was not as complicated, at least on the technical project permitting side, as this one might be. So just some additional context.
So it might be back here by August next year, plus or minus. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Walsh.
Well, I just, on the financial impact on this, it says there are no unanticipated financial impacts incurred. So if there's no unanticipated financial impacts, I mean, what are the anticipated financial impacts then?
That was, we don't have any anticipated ones, nor do we have any unanticipated ones.
Okay, all right. All right, that's what I
Revenue
figured. It
neutral.
was just kind of a interesting way that it was stated. So, anyway.
Okay, do I have a motion?
A double negative in there, so anyway.
Mr. Tran?
Yes, I move to forward the request to the August 13, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here because I have one public comment regarding recreational vehicles.
I apologize, I did it really quickly. I think I want the following one.
The next one. The code, not
The code,
yeah, the number,
item G.
G.
Okay, I kind of look at them as falling together, so that's why. Could you come forward and give us your 3-minute testimony before we go through item F and G, please? And please state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. We don't normally do this. We do it at the beginning of the meeting, but I know you came in late, so we're giving you the opportunity to.
Sure, I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
And the door was locked too, so I had
Yeah.
to find somebody. But anyway, my name is Barbara Marsh, and I've been here before
Yes.
about this recreational vehicle ordinance. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate all the hard work that's been put into it, that what I've seen that you're going to talk about tonight and vote on to send to the mayors, that city council meeting, that I'm really happy with what you've come up with. It works really well for my family, and I would hope that it would work really well for other people that own RVs in Federal Way. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You guys
Barry.
listened to, what I had to say, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming forward and giving us your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to item F, which is revising FWRC 8.50.01, parking recreational vehicles on streets.
Good evening, everyone. So this is a first part of two, as referenced by the council, the committee chair. There are two ordinances here. I'm going to present the first one, then Keith is going to present the second one. They're on relatively topically connected things. And first of all, just to clear up any confusion about why we have two ordinances in the first place as opposed to just a single ordinance. The ordinance I am bringing forward here has to do with regulating parking on city streets and in the right-of-way. And the changes to that are going in a certain title of the Federal Way Revised Code that talks about parking, which is Title 8. The ordinance that Keith is going to be discussing in the next item are changes to how we regulate people's ability to park recreational vehicles on private property, i.e. not on the right-of-way, but on their own private property. Those are changes to the Land Use and Development Code of the city, which are Title 19. Changes to Title 19 have to go through a different process, including Planning Commission review and public hearing prior to getting to you guys at LUTC. That's why we have two separate ordinances, even though they're both discussing recreational vehicles and both designed to fulfill the council's intent with respect to recreational vehicles in the city. So, brief introduction as to my specific ordinance. Over the past year, and for longer than that, there have been many recreational vehicles parked for extended periods of time on city streets, and those have been parked both in residential as well as non-residential portions of the city. And frequently, those recreational vehicles really degrade the appearance of the city to both residents as well as visitors, and can also contribute to parking and/or safety issues. So back in March of this year, the council passed ordinance number 24-983. Excuse me. And as part of that ordinance, the council prohibited parking of recreational vehicles on city streets in all of the non-residential zones. But at that time, the council also determined that we would not yet prohibit parking of recreational vehicles on city streets in the residential zones because council was concerned that the regulations for parking on your own private property were too strict. And therefore, if we made it so that you couldn't park your recreational vehicle on the city street outside your home, that combined with the fact that it was difficult to permit or to allow your RV to be on your own property might make it so that property owners wouldn't have anywhere to park them, and or would have to pay for costly monthly storage fees somewhere else in the city. So this ordinance now, along with Keith's ordinance, this ordinance specifically is designed to prohibit parking of RVs on city streets anywhere in the city. So it's going to add residential zones to the fact that the non-residential zones, you could already not park RVs on those areas. And so very simply, we have two options here: for the proposed ordinance to first reading, or do not for the proposed ordinance and provide direction to staff. And the mayor's recommendation is option 1.
So, I have one question, as I read through the ordinance, on city streets. When someone is gonna use their RV and they've, maybe they decide to rent a space in Sumner and drive it here, and they park it on the street so they can load it up and get ready to leave the next day, it didn't appear to me that there was any, allowance for that, and that seems to be something that we should allow.
And you're correct that as drafted, the ordinance does not have any allowance for that type of loading or offloading. Currently, that would be something that somebody would have to, they'd basically have to take the RV and they'd have to park it in the driveway in order to load it or unload it. In other words, take it onto the private property, get loaded up, and then leave. So you're right, as currently drafted, there is no allowance for doing that on the street next to your home.
It would seem to me that, so we don't have to come back a second time. Not that I have an RV, but if I wanted to load one up, my driveway goes like this, so an RV wouldn't go up there to load it, and I couldn't leave it there. So I think we need to have a little bit of grace in there for people to be able to park their RV, I don't know, for 24 hours or 36 or whatever, where they're getting ready to go on vacation and when they come home.
Sure, that's absolutely something we can add to the ordinance. If you'd like to propose an amendment as part of the motion here, I can accomplish that between now and then. I'd think about the duration that you'd want that to be, whether it's 24 hours or something more or less.
I don't know if 24 hours, it might be 36 or max 48. It's what seems reasonable to me, but that's just my thoughts. I don't know what my other council members think, but I just know packing up and leaving and going is gonna take time, and we've already set it up that neighbor calls up and says, hey, there's an RV here, and the police show up, and, we just missed that one maybe.
Yeah.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. I don't have an RV, but I think we'd have to have a specific amount of hours, because I'm sure that some people will have an issue with that. I would think 24 would be plenty.
Yep.
But I don't know, because I don't have an RV. Is 24?
Well, sometimes you park it and you plug it in to get the refrigerator cold, so 24 might not be enough. 36, maybe something a little longer, I think, and then to unload, get home, try to park it, exhausted from driving, I don't always unload everything.
And sorry, just because this isn't getting recorded, do you mind continuing your comments up here?
Well, you're walking up there, so if you have to plug in the appliances to get them cold, and then you would run, you can keep walking, so, then you would have to run an extension cord
Extension cord.
on the sidewalk?
No, you put it, you would put it, you'd run it under the vehicle, and then, so it wouldn't be that nobody'd be tripping on it, and then it would go up your lawn or whatever, and you just plug it in. It wouldn't be, well, I don't have sidewalks at my house, so.
Oh, well, I'm just thinking, for those
And
that
maybe
do have
not every-
sidewalks, it would
Yeah.
be,
You probably would have to plug it in, because our next ordinance says you can't run the generator. So if you're gonna need to plug something in, you can't
Well-
run generators in the neighborhood, so
right, but then it's a safety risk if
I'm
someone.
okay with plugging it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my is a related thing. Hey, if Uncle George and Aunt May come and pull up for the afternoon, we need to have some type of, 24, 36, 48 at the most. So we'd need to have some sort of hour in
That's
there.
reasonable, I think.
And so,
Well, then we might want to require that the extension cord is taped or something to the sidewalk so people aren't going to trip on it and fall. Seriously, I mean,
Yeah, no,
it's a public sidewalk. Who's responsible for an injury there?
I can guarantee the city would be named in that lawsuit,
I could guarantee you that there would be one eventually.
indeed. I would also note, just for your consideration, council members, as soon as we put a duration where it's permitted to park an RV for a specific purpose, it does make this ordinance a lot harder to enforce as a practical matter, because then we need to figure out, why is that RV parked there? Is it parked there because it's fueling up for tomorrow? Is it parked there just because it's parked there for a day or so? It requires either the police or code enforcement or public works, to the extent that right-of-way inspectors would have anything to do with this. I don't think they would. But it requires them to kind of make a judgment as to why somebody's RV is there, which does become more difficult for them. The other thing is, it's a lot more difficult to prove that this RV has been parked here for 26 hours, 21 hours. All those are considerations. Not to say that it's a bad idea, just a consideration that it does become more difficult to enforce, as opposed to just saying, there's an RV there, it's in the wrong spot, period.
Council President Kochmar?
It's okay. Mrs. Barbara, if you'd like to, go ahead.
A thought occurred to me, say your cousin comes to visit you, and they have an RV, and they're going to stay for a day or two. Are they not allowed to park next to your house?
They would not be
They
able to.
would not be. Okay, well, that was just, but since you're talking about that stuff.
And I would just think that 48 hours would be a reasonable expectation. I mean, literally, if you're worried about how long it's been there, you just ask the neighbor, they're going to tell you. But, I just want to clarify that they can park on their own property, like in their driveway or on their own property.
Subject to the requirements that Keith will discuss in the
Yeah,
next
right.
ordinance. But yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, not on the committee, but 48 sounds appropriate.
Councilmember Honda?
What do other cities do with this? Do they allow?
I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll speculate for a second here and say that I suspect that if adopted, this would make our prohibition on parking of RVs stricter than most. That would be my speculation. I don't think there's many cities that prohibit parking of RVs anywhere in the city on streets.
Okay, thank you.
But I need to, that is speculation. I need to verify that to be 100% sure.
Thank you.
Well, it would just seem to me that we're going to pass, I mean, this has come forward, I believe we need to do it, so that we eliminate a lot of things that could happen in the future and all that. But I'm a little concerned if it's black and white so much that you can't park there and load your RV up, it might be an issue. I mean, we probably wouldn't even know about it unless the neighbor called, so it's usually where we find all that stuff out anyway, but it would be helpful if there was some suggestion on that. Councilmember?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we have a 48-hour in there, and does that need to be made by a amendment that we propose
Yeah,
right now, or
so
just you write it up and then give it back to us to pass it
There's
on to?
Few ways we could do it. We could one, pass this on to council for further discussion, and then at that point, figure it out. My recommendation would not be to do that. I think if you want to forward it with amendments, that would be my suggestion. There's one other thing that's floating in here, which is from this piece of paper that Keith just gave to me, which is that, so Keith's ordinance is going to go to council for hearing, which is going to make its consideration meeting after this, it would be considered. So if you'd like to keep them together at the same time, perhaps we could draft something in the meantime, I guess, and discuss it at council and then adopt it at the next meeting. That's another possibility that's running through my head. I have one question about the 48-hour thing. If indeed there's desire to put a 48-hour provision in there, would that be a 48-hour provision period, i.e. it's okay to park it in a residential area for 48 hours period, or would it be a 48 hours so long as you are fueling and whatever near your residence prior to a trip?
It seems to me as though it would, would be a lot easier if it was just 48-hour period so that the code enforcement or the police or whoever else isn't having to make inquiries on the what and the why. I mean, hey, just, hey, it's been there 48 hours, got to move it.
Not to further muddy this waters, but if we do write it that way and say you have 48 hours period, then they could probably just move it after 48 hours a block down the road and then have another 48 hours there.
Yeah. The intent of this is a period of time, a resident who owns a motorhome in their house could load it. We came to this because we don't want, I think we came here because motorhomes should not be in the neighborhoods, and originally it was park it here, move it there, and it was a whack-a-mole of having a bunch of motorhomes running around the neighborhoods. So I would not want anything that says you can move it and then they get another 48 hours. It should be written specifically, a homeowner who parks it in front of their house to load it is the only option of anybody that gets any time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then here's what I would recommend. I would recommend that you move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on August 13th, 2024, with amendments that would allow a property owner to load the RV, load and or fuel the RV for 48 hours on the public street.
Councilmember.
I kind of have a different idea on that. Maybe have it cannot be parked more than 48 hours in any place in the city, so that it doesn't matter, hey, you move it across the street, that's still within that 48 hours. And so cannot be parked on a city street for 48 hours, regardless
More than
of whether
48 hours.
whether it's moved or not.
But you can't do that because, I don't think you can do that because 48 hours, if you've moved it from the residence, then those 48 hours start from,
No, but what I'm saying is that is the 48 hours total. It doesn't matter if you move it or not. If you move it, that's still within that 48 hours.
Yeah, again, from an enforcement perspective, I would suggest that that's quite difficult to figure out, because then you've got is this the same RV that we saw on 3/20th 4 days ago type situation? But that is definitely an option as well.
I don't think I could support that.
Okay.
I would only support, give them a time in front of their house to load it, be very black and white, and if somebody needs to go park it, they can go down to Walmart and hang out there, because they let them park there.
Okay.
But I'm only one vote, so. Do I have a motion, or do I need to make it with an amendment?
Okay, I'll make the motion. Okay, so I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on August 13, 2024 with
Amendments.
amendment. Okay, help me out here.
To allow a homeowner to park in front of their house for loading and unloading of the RV for up to 48 hours.
Okay.
A joint amendment?
So I'll second that. As amended.
Sound good.
We have a
Okay.
motion and a second.
We've put it all together as a team effort here. Is there, and it's been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay. We're going to go to item G, which is the adoption of a proposed recreation vehicle code amendment, which is a little different than the one we just talked about.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members Tran and Walsh, Council President Kochmar, and City Council Keith Niven, Community Development Director. So, without further ado, so we are talking tonight about proposed code amendments for recreational vehicles. And just to remind you all, we came before you in April to just kind of we had done some research from some other cities, looked at how they were handling RVs, and we kind of laid it all out as a menu. And what I took away from that was we did have some public comment, and that was helpful. There was also some conversation amongst the council members about, this should be reasonable. There were certain provisions from, I think, Kirkland and some other places that talked about screening. And I definitely heard some comments about, don't make this too expensive so that people can't afford to actually put their RVs on their lots. So with that, the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the City of Federal Way amend the Federal Way Revised Code, FWRC, Title 19, Zoning and Development, replacing the size limitation for recreational vehicles parked on residential properties with other standards to make it easier for property owners and residents to store these vehicles on their property? Alrighty? So, right now, to remind you all, the existing code says that you cannot have a recreational vehicle or a boat in excess of 9 by 22 feet on your property. And as we talked about last time, 9 by 22 pretty much excludes every RV that's made in the United States. So we had kind of a de facto limitation just by this code. So what we're talking about is taking out that limitation of 9 by 22. The suggestion, and this was in the Bellevue Code, is also adding, right now this section of code is recreational vehicles and boats. And Bellevue's code also had a utility trailer. And it just seemed like, you know what, if we're talking about these kind of bigger things, let's go ahead and add that to our definition and requirements as well. So that is part of this code amendment. And then what we're adding as far as new requirements, it may not intrude into the right-of-way or obstruct visibility for traffic. It can't be a traffic hazard. The second is it shall not be parked in the front yard unless there's no reasonable access to side yard or back. So again, this is if, but there are not many lots in Federal Way that have a 10-foot wide side yard. But if there is one, the idea is you'd put it on the side or in the back and not in the front. But the front is fine if you can't do that. We originally had suggested changing the surface of the material to either concrete or asphalt, and we heard that that was expensive. And so right now, the code allows for it to be gravel, and that is what this proposed code doesn't change that at all. No more than one RV. There was conversation, well, what if my son brings his RV? And it's like, no, there's not going to be like 3 or 4 RVs parked in the yard. That was not a look I think we were trying to get. It's not used as a residence unless it's approved by the city. And we talked about, if you were doing a major remodel on your house or something and it was going to take 3 months and you wanted to live in your RV while you remodeled your house, that seemed absolutely fine. And so there are provisions in the code to allow for that. It needs to be licensed and operable. In other words, the kind of broken down RV that's been sitting there for 15 years and never moves, that's not something we were looking for. And then it needs to be owned by the property owner or the resident. And so right now, that's what's being proposed in the code. And this is all the, I'm not going to read any of this. There are basically criteria in the code to amend development regulations. There are 3 of them. I believe that this code amendment satisfies all 3 of them. We can go through that in detail if any of you want. Option number 1 is to move the proposed ordinance to the September 3rd, 2024 council meeting for first reading and public hearing. And as Kent mentioned, this can't go to the August 13th council meeting, 1, because I'm on vacation, but 2, we tried to have the hearing at the Planning Commission. They could not get a quorum. And because there's a 2-week noticing period before hearings, rather than cycle this through and not bring it forward to council until September/October, we felt like let's just have the hearing at full city council. So that's why this is going to, assuming you guys approve, going to the council meeting on the 3rd. And with that, I am absolutely done.
Okay, Councilmember Felchmeyer.
Thank you. So Keith, this is kind of providential, but my son just had a house fire.
Oh,
So this is the
Sorry.
way, well, so this is the way it works. Trying to have the insurance company trying to find a place for them to live from 3 to 6 months. I have no idea why it's going to take that long, but there's nothing available. And you can get housing up to $10,000 a month with a damage deposit. I mean, $10,000 a month
Wow.
to rent? So, and they absolutely require that you have something with a kitchenette or kitchen in it. So somebody suggested that he get an RV, but if he were to get an RV and park it on his property, he's not going to own it, he would just rent it, I mean, because he's not going to buy an RV. So when you say owner-owned.
Owner or the tenant of the property. So, I mean, so we're not
But
going
he's not going to own it, he's going to rent it.
Yeah, so it's more about who's in the RV, or whose RV is it? We don't want, we
Maybe you
don't
could
want.
say owner or tenant occupied rather than owned. Owner of the building, owner of the house or tenant occupied in the
Yes.
RV.
That's the intent. I'll double check
Yeah,
the
just watch
language.
that. 'Cause you
Council
said
President,
owner-owned.
do you know what it is?
Yeah, we do need to change that language if
Okay.
that's the intent.
That is the intent. It is about the person who is in
Right.
the RV is
Yeah.
either the owner of the property or a tenant of the property and not a
And
third party.
That's perfect. You just have to watch that language, otherwise somebody's going to be, in the military, they call it SOL.
Council President, we'll amend that section to say the RV, utility trailer, or boat shall be occupied by a resident or the property owner. And actually, I'm going to have to split it up because the RV has to be occupied, the utility trailer or boat needs to be owned. So we can effectuate that.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely, that was the intent.
Councilmember Honda?
Oh, thank you. I have a few questions. So what is the definition of a reasonable access to the side yard or backyard? Do we need to have a definition? Or is someone on the city just going to do it case by case?
As currently drafted, it would be the latter. This is kind of a, you can write code in a number of different ways type answer. If we specify the specific situations that are reasonable in the code, the problem there is when you specify certain things and you don't specify certain other things, then the intimation is that the things that you haven't specified are not reasonable. So if we do list things, that's the downside of doing it that way. To your point, though, the downside of saying reasonable access is that we don't have concrete examples, and therefore it's a little bit harder on the front end to determine what that is, but it also gives us a little bit more discretion in applying that reasonable use standard to any particular situation on a property. So it could be done either way.
Okay. And no more than one RV or boat or utility trailer, that's correct?
No
you
more
could-
than one
Of each.
of each.
So
is the
you
way-
could have you could have three things, one trailer, one boat, and one RV.
In one yard?
Yes.
That's how it's drafted currently, yes. No more than one RV, utility trailer, and boat may be stored at any one time.
That would have to be a pretty big yard to accommodate all that, or they would take up the entire yard.
Yes.
Actually,
So-
there's lots of yards in this city like mine. You could get that in quite comfortably.
And there's lots that you couldn't, too. So they have to be parked on gravel, not grass.
Yes.
And so this question, so let's say I'm renting a house from someone and I want to park my RV on that property, but my landlord doesn't want me to. Can the landlord prohibit the renter from doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
And HOAs are another layer to this, council member.
I live in
HOAs
one, yeah.
may not allow any of this, yes.
Thank you.
So I have two questions. One would be, we hear on the ads all the time now, or on the radio, rent your extra space and make money, you know, if you, somebody will bring in RVs, somebody will put boxes in their garage, and I don't know if you've heard these ads, but they're going around, it's like Airbnb for RVs. Those would be prohibited by this code, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I get calls a couple times, well, not every month, but seems like it, by people who have RVs in somebody's yard and somebody's living in it. Now, how does that cross over between the ADU codes we've done and the RV? We just said that only the owner could live in if they're remodeling. How would you differentiate that?
So an RV is defined in the code of being, it's a recreational vehicle.
Yeah.
And so if there is an RV on the property, yes, you cannot live in it unless you get director approval because of some mitigating circumstances with the main structure. Different than an ADU or potentially other things that we might approve later, which would allow other people to live on the property.
So if someone has an RV and they came to the director and said, my son or daughter just got back from, Afghanistan, I mean, that happened a while ago, but anyway, and I have no place for them to live, but I have the RV, I'd like them to live in the RV next to my house. Is that something that gets approved or is not approved, or, you're the director, I mean, how does that? That's a sad story that you hate to hear, but how does that work if it does?
That would not get approved.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, the gentleman that was here with public comment a couple of weeks ago that had gotten a citation from code enforcement, that ties in with this that we're discussing here, correct?
I believe so. I vaguely remember that gentleman's situation.
It's, sorry, for my knowledge, is that the one where there was kind of a van that was parked in a second driveway on the property?
It was a small RV.
Okay.
It was a small RV parked on a second driveway on the property.
That
And
should be
so-
fine.
So that was more about the second driveway than it was the RV, I believe.
I thought it was about the size.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just a little bit larger
big.
than what we allowed.
So we're getting rid of,
driveway-
we're getting rid of the size limitation piece. So again, I don't remember all the details on that gentleman's issue. I think the way that it played out, though, kind of the issue of having two driveways, I think is something that is not something that's going to cause him a problem right now.
Okay, because with this, I mean, basically, if somebody is parking an RV in a gravel driveway, it's probably a second driveway.
Yeah, so I can address this. The code does not allow for two driveways unless there's a certain amount of property frontage, which EJ is at like 360 feet. It's pretty high, right? 330 feet of frontage. So if you have two driveways on a property that doesn't have 330 feet of frontage, that's a violation under our code currently.
So-
Irrespective of whether this is an RV or a car or whatever else it might be.
So is a gravel parking pad for an RV, is that considered a driveway?
No, a parking pad would not qualify as a driveway. But I will tell you that what a parking pad is and what a driveway is, sometimes they look very similar. So something that you might think is a parking pad might actually qualify as a driveway under our code.
What is a driveway under our code then?
Curb cut.
Something that you park something on. I don't know.
Isn't a driveway a curb cut?
Give me 1 second.
So typically, you're talking about the driveway, there's the part that's in the right-of-way, which is the curb cut, or, it could be a rolled curb, it could be flat if there is no curb on that side of the street, if it's a rural standard. The driveway tends to,
Well, where that one was, it's a rolled, where there's no different, it's a rolled curb, so there's no difference between where the driveway is and where the lawn is, or just the sidewalk is.
so typically, if there's like a rolled curb and you immediately graveled back from that, that then becomes a driveway and could be a parking pad. In that case, it could be both.
Yeah, driveway is defined in our code to say an area of the property designed to provide vehicular access. So if you can drive from the right-of-way up onto the driveway, that's a driveway.
So how are we going to park an RV on something that you cannot, it seems like that we're,
It needs to be in your single driveway.
So it's off to the side of your existing drive. So if you have a driveway and you can put a 10-foot by 20-foot pad on the side of it where you have to actually use the existing driveway to get to the street, that would work. And that's how a
Okay,
lot of
so,
people.
so that gentleman that was here, his concrete driveway is on one side of the property, and then he has what I would consider a parking pad, you know?
Yeah, so
uh,
as
on the other side of the lot, and so you're saying that would still be not permissible?
That's correct. However, I will
That's a-
tell you that as a practical matter, we don't, Public Works does not proactively enforce on people with two driveways. It's enforced when the person comes in for a development permit on their property. So in other words, if somebody has two driveways and they put them in illegally, and then they come in and ask for a permit from the city, that's when it gets flagged. They don't proactively go out and say, you have two driveways, you got to fix it.
So what was the resolution on this gentleman that came in that had?
Exactly
done
what
the
I just
citation?
said, which is we determined that the only violation on the property was a two driveway violation. We don't, until such time as they come in for permits for something else, we will not be proactively enforcing.
So.
Or a complaint, sorry, yes. If a complaint comes in about the two driveways, we would at that point perhaps treat it differently as
So
well.
was that citation upheld, or was it dismissed?
So there.
We dismissed it. There was no citation there.
Okay.
There's no citation. I mean, those folks asked if they could get it permitted, because I think they wanted to legitimize that second driveway. And the direction that staff gave was, you're welcome to ask, but it probably won't be approved. So they just went away.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So I live in an HOA, and I doubt that any of this will be allowed. But how many HOAs do we have in Federal Way?
I don't know the answer
Communities?
to that. I don't. I don't think we have an inventory of all the HOAs in the city.
Okay.
I think we have 7 in Marine Hills.
Are they all strictly enforcing their covenants?
Yeah, HOAs, I mean, they seem pretty active.
There's obviously
Mine is.
there's a wide latitude in terms of, HOAs and how strictly they enforce. Some HOAs don't enforce their covenants at all, right?
Yeah.
So it really just depends. And some of them may have nothing in there that talks about RVs.
Okay, do I have a motion to move this ahead?
I move to the forward, well, hold on. So we were going to change this from, still public hearing on September 3rd then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading and public hearing on September 3rd, 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for all the work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for the citizens that came forward, Barbara, for bringing it to our attention a long time ago. Appreciate it. Okay, we're on item H, which is comprehensive plan update, information only.
Okay, so this one, the good news is we've brought every comp plan chapter forward to you guys as a briefing, and so that's done. This is something new for the city this year. Our comprehensive plan, in the past, big document, a lot of time spent on it, and I think the criticism is, once it gets approved, it gets put on the shelf for 10 years until we take it down and update it again. And so what we're putting in the comp plan this year is an implementation appendix. And what this is going to do is going to allow us to actually track, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll show you an example of land use, which is the first chapter. So basically, what we're going to do here is we've created a number of implementing actions that will happen either in the short term, which is 1 to 2 years, or medium term, which is 3 to 5 years. And we've identified a list, and we will come to the council every year and tell you the progress that we've made on implementing and getting these things done. So what this will do is give us a trackable way to look at all the implementation measures coming out of the city's comprehensive plan and annually have a conversation about whether we think we're making enough progress on implementing it or not. That is my entire presentation, and I'm here for questions if you have any.
Will this be in a format that citizens can view and see what's progress?
So we could do that if that is something the council would like. We could put this on planning's webpage. You know, the idea is, and Planning Commission like this a lot, and so the idea of actually reporting out annually of what we got done, they thought this was a big step forward for us as a city. So I am happy to have this as visible as possible, and if you guys want us to explore some of that, I can talk to my admin staff and see what we can do.
It might be nice to have a little thermometer that says how many of the 11,000 homes we've actually got.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other business anybody like to bring up?
I have something.
Councilmember Honda?
Keith, do we have, or whatever staff, any information on Belmore Park and Sound Transit and the purchase of the properties there and how that's going?
In terms of timing, or, I mean, so
So how many are actually being purchased? And, you know, when they initially came to us, interest rates were really low. Sound Transit wasn't ready to make any offers. Now interest rates are quite a bit higher. And so I'm just curious as to how it's going and how many properties are actually needing to move or.
do you know off the top of your head, EJ?
I don't know an exact number. It's a substantial number.
Because it wasn't going to be initially a substantial number.
So there were.
What they told us.
Yeah, and I would say the word substantial is a little bit arbitrary. So I think substantial in the world of Sound Transit, when you're looking at the Tacoma Dome Link Extension project as a whole, when to your point, when they originally presented on this, and the OMF was going to be built in conjunction with the TDLE project, and you were looking at the number of Belmore residents versus the number of properties for that entire, to go from 320th to the Tacoma Dome.
Right.
It, you know, not to trivialize it, but it would be a negligible number compared to the number. I think when you shorten it to be the project that's proposed now of just the OMF, it's a substantially higher percentage of properties. So I think you can characterize the number in any way you want, depending on the narrative you're trying to tell. Last I looked at it, and don't quote me because I haven't looked at this in a while, I believe it's about 40.
I heard 77, but I don't know how
So
accurate
I
that is.
think that might be inclusive of the partial takes where the property owner will not need to be relocated, and there's like easements and stuff like that. I believe it's 40 that will be relocations.
Okay.
You know, to your question about the interest rates, so similar to what we were required to do with our own maintenance yard, under federal law, as part of any relocation, anyone that has an active mortgage, Sound Transit will be on the hook to pay the difference between their current mortgage rate and their new mortgage rate in percentage, and then effectively in what we would, you know, if we were to go, any of us were to go buy a house, the concept of buying down points, they have to do the same. There are federal laws about the fact that, like, if you go out for a private sale and try and buy down points, there's a maximum number set by HUD that anybody can buy down. When an agency goes through that process, there is no limit. The agency has the authority under federal law to buy down as many points as they need to get it to that same rate. I will tell you that there are times when you start getting into, especially with senior citizens, when you start getting into the conversation of HUD and reverse mortgages and all of the other different types of mortgages that are out there, sometimes buying down points is actually detrimental to the person that you're relocating. So, you know, the advice I have always given everybody when you're talking about relocation, the best move they can do is Sound Transit is also obligated to reimburse the resident for legal consultation, to take advantage of that. You really should have a lawyer that's working on your behalf that can review the mortgages, review the terms that you're getting, and make sure that you're getting the right thing for your situation. Because someone that just moved in there with a very high mortgage rate, it probably makes a whole ton of sense for them to buy down the mortgage rate. Someone that has almost paid off a 30-year mortgage, that's probably not the case. Frankly, that situation, they're probably actually better with a higher mortgage rate when you actually run all the numbers and capital gains and everything else that goes into that conversation. And that's where we can't, as a city, answer every question in the very specific context of what is right for every individual. And frankly, Sound Transit's required to reimburse them for that service. So anybody that's ever talked to me, that's my advice, is you should absolutely understand your relocation rights. But beyond that, you really should have someone lobbying on your behalf.
So today, council got an email from someone on behalf of a resident whose home will be displaced because of Sound Transit. And it's a facility that holds up to 24 people. It's a substance use disorder residence. And he's anxious about the displacement and is unclear if he will receive adequate replacements for his business. How do we help him, or do we just advise him, as you just advised people to go for the legal?
So first cut is legal.
Okay.
You know, business relocation's a whole different conversation. And they are obligated to replace businesses too. And that gets even more complicated because there is, you know, again, under the federal requirements, there is payment if you, like, the business owner gets to pick where they want to go. And if you say, hey, I'm in close proximity, and I don't know the business specifically you're talking about, but for argument's sake, if I'm in close proximity to 18 and 348th, and I think that I get a lot of drive-by traffic that has advertising value of people, and obviously not in the business you're bringing up, but advertise and walk-in business, and the only location I can find is in unincorporated King County, 2 miles from an exit. There's a process for a period of so many years, depending on the value of the business. They have to pay the profit, or the loss in profit more specifically, from that relocation to a lower class office building or a lower class location of an office building. So they're entitled to all of that. Like I said, this gets really into the weeds really, really quickly. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of angst about relocation, and there should be. It's you're talking about moving people's lives and livelihoods.
Is there any way that eventually, maybe not at this committee or whatever, maybe just at a council meeting, we can get an update on how relocation is going there's a lot of people affected in Federal Way for this project.
There is, absolutely. We can certainly ask Sound Transit that. There's requirements about what they can and cannot disclose to us in the name of protecting individuals.
Correct.
So I can certainly bring that up with them and see if they're willing. But I can't make promises that we can get them here off the top of my head.
I understand that. Okay, thank you.
You know, there's one, thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember. There's one other situation for the mobile home parks that are going to be affected when the property is sold. You know, I know a property in another state where the mobile home, after 25 years, was deemed ineligible to be sold. And they had to remove the mobile home at their own expense and was not able to sell anything. So, you know, if that happens with some of the people in Belmar, some of those mobile homes in Belmar are pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to have a problem if that property is sold underneath the mobile home, you know, those people are going to be displaced with no place to go.
So I don't know if Keith can chime in on this too, but my understanding on the way the relocation works is anything like that, Sound Transit will be obligated to buy the mobile home as well.
No, not
just-
Sound Transit, when Belmar goes to sell the property.
When Heinz sells the rest of the property. So that's a different deal, right? I mean, so Sound Transit is eminent domaining through a number of people's homes, and they have to make them whole, whatever that means. When the property owner wants to redevelop, whether or not they are contractually obligated to any compensation for those existing homeowners or, lessees, because they're leasing the land. We're not privy to that, but yes, they will be displaced. And that is one of the things that we talk about in our housing chapter of our comprehensive plan is displacement is hard these days because there's nowhere for anybody to go. Whether you're going from a manufactured home park or just a smaller single-family house and trying to find another one, there just aren't any. So that's a real issue, and we'll have to deal with it when we get there.
There are some state law protections for members of mobile home communities. For instance, there's relocation assistance and anti-displacement funding from the Department of Commerce, which doesn't cover anywhere near to the full amount, but there are protections there. There are also specific protections in the Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act with respect to basically formal hoops that the park owner has to jump through in order to properly legally do a closure. So there are some protections, but to your point, they're just some protections and a bit of money. They're not full protections.
But you're afraid for some of those mobile homes, they can't move them and relocate them because
They'll fall apart.
they'll fall apart,
Yeah.
right? So it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I just have one comment on the discussion, which we might want to be aware of, and maybe you already thought of that, or this is what we're saying, but Belmore Park, the owners own the property, get compensated for the property, and the homeowners, like you talk about, that own the mobile home, may be left out. And they won't be left out, but the value is so much different because they have a leased property instead of a home, like they own the property and own the structure. And maybe that's already been calculated in, but that's a little more tricky.
Yeah, so similar to business relocation, which is probably a more apt comparison for this one specifically, when you have an underlying property owner and you have a tenant, effectively, both parties get paid out. So Sound Transit will have to effectively make both parties whole. So the property tenant, in this case the mobile home residents, typically make out much better because they end up in a equal or better house in a new location that, yes, it may be further from their doctor, it may not be, whatever the case may be, but they typically end up upgraded. The underlying property owner basically gets the value of the land, and there's very little negotiation that happens there, which that would be the Heinz Group specifically. So the tenants, whether the mobile home can be relocated or not, they will not be necessarily out, if that makes sense. They will be put into a home of equal value, a better or value. And then there's it's called a displacement guarantee. That
right.
effectively you can't increase someone's payment because you're moving them under eminent domain. So
Right.
their mortgage has to stay the same.
Yeah, that's Sound Transit, but when we're dealing with Belmar Mobile Park itself, and those people all have to move, some of them are going to be without a place to live at all.
Yeah, maybe we should look at buying Belmore Park. Make it a new town center.
There was a plan for that at one time. Not for the city to buy it, but for a new town center there.
Okay, so any other future agenda items anybody would like to bring up before we close? Seeing none, we will now adjourn. Thank you.